Hey guys, this is Hunter with SCSurvival and Hunting. Today we're going to be taking a look at what is ham radio. Now, what I have here today is I have the Baofeng UV5R handheld portable ham radio. Now this is one of my personal radios and I'm going to be using it as more of a prop for today. Now it's going to be mostly talking, just so that I can kind of talk everyone who's new to ham radio through the basics. And that's really what this video is. It's discussing what is ham radio, what are the basics of it, and how can you get involved into ham radio. So, what is ham radio? Well, amateur radio, or ham radio, is a very popular hobby and service that brings people together. People use ham radio to talk across town, around the world, or even into space, all without the internet or cell phones. It's fun, social, educational, and can be a lifeline during times of need. And I have found that to be very true. About a couple months ago, when a tornado came through my town, I was able to use my ham radio to listen out for the tornado and also to be able to track it after it had already been through. So, amateur radio or ham radio is a very fun and exciting hobby that has many different activities associated with it. Some of which are talking around the world without wires, which is really a new thing in this century. Talking locally through different repeaters, emergency communications, public service communications, contests, fox hunting, amateur radio satellites, and much, much more. Now, when I talk to a lot of people about ham radio, they say, well, isn't that the same thing as CB radio? And I really just want to debunk that myth before we go get too much farther into this video. Ham radio is different from CB radio, which stands for Citizens Band. Now, ham radio is also different from the Family Radio Service, or FRS, and the General Mobile Radio Service, which is GMRS. Now, FRS and GMRS are like local, not local, they're bands that you would find on a regular $20 walkie-talkie set you could pick up at Walmart or wherever you buy your radios from. That's an example of FRS and GMRS services. Now, ham radio is different from these because these different groups only allow local communications using strictly limited modes and frequencies. Although some CB operators do manage to talk fairly long distances using illegal linear amplifiers. Also, by comparison, ham radio operators are allowed to use every mode of communication: AM, FM, CW, SSB, RTTY, SSTV, ATV, packet, and hundreds of others that you probably have never heard of. We as ham radio operators have privileges all across the radio spectrum from shortwave to microwave. We routinely talk to other hams across the globe, from Antarctica to Greenland, from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe, all without breaking a single law. Ham radio is also polite radio, without the crude and foul language of CB, probably due in large part to its licensing requirements. Now, speaking of licensing requirements, there are 3 different tiers of licenses for ham radio. There's a technician class, which that is currently what I am at right now. That's the very first stage to get into. It's very easy to go and to take the test. It's very easy to get the study material. They have a lot of stuff that is readily available out there. Now, the second tier is general. General is a little bit harder than technician, and it requires a little bit more studying to do. Now, above general is extra, and most or almost all of the extra users that you see out there will be people who are older, mostly because it takes more time to study for, and really you just don't need extra unless you plan on committing almost your whole life to ham radio. So really, for all the beginners, technician would be just fine for most everybody. If you wanted to really get into it more, I would recommend general, and just to stop right there, general. Now, going back to licensing requirements. To use ham radio, you must pass a written examination and be assigned a call sign from the FCC. Now, the FCC stands for Federal Communications Commission. Now, call signs, they differ from each other. You know, for example, some call signs are 4 letters, some are 4 digits, so to speak, because they're a mix of letters and numbers. Some are 5 and some are 6. So, for example, you could have A1 is your call sign. You could also have BBB22, and you know, it just goes on and on of what your call sign could be. Now, up until recently, you had to have, you had to pass the Morse code exam to get your ham license. However, the FCC did away with that requirement a few years ago, so thankfully there are no more Morse code tests. Now, the FCC currently issues the 3 different licenses, which I went over earlier. The examination for the entry-level technician license is fairly easy, covering basic ham radio regulations, safety, operating practices, and simple electronics, which is very helpful to learn. Now, the exam has 35 questions on it, and you only need 75% or 26 questions to pass the test. Now, the questions are selected from a published pool of about 400 standard questions. I think the number is 397, but it could have changed since I took the exam. So it's about 400 questions. Now, it only takes about, most people say about 10 hours to study. I think I might have done 5 and I still passed. You know, just depending on your background and your memory and your ability to prepare for the exam. Now, while you're preparing for the exam, you're also going to learn about your new hobby. So, the technician license is primarily useful for talking around town using repeaters, although it does allow all modes of communications in the VHF, UHF, microwave, and beyond. Unfortunately, it only gives very limited privileges in the HF bands, the ones primarily used for the long-distance communications. Each subsequent license exam is more challenging, but also conveys additional operating privileges. The general class license gives you extensive privileges in the HF frequencies, enough to talk to every country in the world. The extra exam is quite difficult with a pool of over 700 questions. It is considered to be the crown jewel of amateur radio licenses. Now, after hearing all this information, you might be asking, well, what in the world can I do with this? Well, ham radio is basically a social hobby. Whether you're talking around town, around the world, at club meetings or conversations, you'll be getting to know some pretty darn nice people, I must say. Some hams enjoy collecting QSL cards, or postcards from other hams confirming contacts around the world. Some go for awards, like the DX Century Club, which means that you have confirmed contacts with hams in 100 different countries. And the list goes on and on for what you can do with it. Personally, I enjoyed the public service part, providing communication support for events, you know, similar to like the Boston Marathon or the Jimmy Fun Walk, you know, just different events. Like I know locally here, one that I really enjoy doing is helping with a local run. The ham radio operators get out there and they will patrol around, you know, make sure everybody's okay and be able to report back. So that's one thing that I really do like about it. Well, you might be asking, how much does it cost? You know, ham radio is not really that expensive to go get a license. You can get started for under $75. You can get the online entry-level exam course for $24.95. Now that's online. Now, I went to a local club to get mine done, and I want to say it cost $15. So, now that was for the license itself. Now, for the license exam session fee, that varies. I think it was $10 for mine. So, and the Baofeng UV5R radio, which I have sitting right here, I want to say is on Amazon. Excuse me. Excuse me, frog in my throat there. The Baofeng, I want to say, is on sale at Amazon for about $30, somewhere around there. So for all of maybe $60, $65, you can have your radio and your license all ready to go ahead and talk. Now, if you want to talk around the world, a complete HF system, which is the really fancy and expensive system, the one that you normally have to have your technician license for, those can range anywhere from $100 to $10,000 or more. On the inexpensive side, if you're willing to settle for used equipment without all the latest features, you can often find fully functional HF rigs in the $100 to $300 range, and it costs next to nothing to build your own homemade dipole antenna. But once you obtain your license, contact your local amateur radio club for advice, then you can hear about the latest and greatest deals. So, just a couple questions that I had posed to me. The first one was, where can I get more information? Well, the best ways to learn about ham radio is to talk to hams face to face. Ham operators take pride in their ability to teach newcomers. And those older, more experienced hams, those are called Elmers. And so they love getting to talk to new people, introducing them to the ham radio community. And there is probably an amateur radio club near you, and all you have to do is you just type in ham radio club and type in your zip code, and that should normally pull you up a good website to look for. Also, you can go and complete the online form for the amateur radio prospect package online, and that's a really good thing that I strongly suggest. And a lot of people also ask, how do I get started? So basically, all you have to do is get your license. You know, ham radio operators seem like they know everything, and you know, a lot of them really don't. But all you have to do to simply get into the ham radio world is get your license. That's all, for about 25 or 30 bucks just to get your license. That's without even a radio. So one of the reasons why I personally like ham radio is the fact that I can use it for survival. Now, I know most ham operators are not into survival. They're not into, you know, some might say prepping, you know. They're really just doing it as a hobby because they enjoy that, because it is fun. Well, good for them. But personally, I like to use ham radio because I can communicate around town with some of my survival buddies, you know, in case we're planning an event or a trip somewhere. It's good communications. It's also good to have for when the power goes out, because these things are portable. They have a battery pack in the back here, and a lot of these base station or rigs that you might see put up in people's homes, most of the time they are either run off solar power or they are run off of a battery bank that will last a little bit over 24 hours of continuous use. So these things are great for survival. That's why I love them so much, and I hope that you all have really enjoyed watching this video. If you all have any questions that you would like me to answer about ham radio, I would be more than happy to. Just leave a comment down there below the video, and I will get those answered as soon as I can. If I have enough questions, we might go ahead and do a second video on this. If not, I'll just try to answer them down there in the comments section. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. This is SCSurvival and Hunting. We hope to hear from you soon. Thanks.